Thanks so much, Barry, and good morning. It really is a pleasure to be here this morning to kick off today's panel discussion about what we need to do to position Virginia's economy for growth. You know, after listening to the last panel with 4 enthusiastic cheerleaders for why Virginia is a great place to do business, I feel a little bit like the former chairman of the Federal Reserve, Bill Martin, who was actually the longest-serving chairman of the Federal Reserve, who, when asked to define the role of our central bank, explained that the Fed should, quote, take away the punch bowl just as the party gets going. The reason I say that is to remind everyone that, yes, Virginia, we have some problems too. As a native Virginian, one who is educated here, one who has served the state as a public servant, I too was brainwashed in the cult of Virginia infallibility. Remember, we're Virginia, home of George Washington, of Jefferson, of Madison, of Monroe, of Maggie Walker, and many other great Americans. Starting at Jamestown, we were the home of the first Thanksgiving, the place where America won its freedom at Yorktown, the place where America reunited at Appomattox. Yes, Virginia's used to being a leader. Unfortunately, even leaders in charge of an intelligent people and a prosperous people, we sometimes get misguided. We need to look no further than the ugly stain of discrimination on the fabric of Virginia to see that we are far from perfect. Another way that shows we're far from perfect is that we've also become complacent in Virginia. We thought the seemingly never-ending flow of federal money that was sprinkled across every corner of the Commonwealth equated to perpetual economic success. We often fell victim to our own marketing and our rhetoric that we were the best in everything. But even winners stumble and fall, and that's what happened to Virginia. It's not the fault of one person, or of one party, or of one decision, but instead a series of missed opportunities that put us in the position we're in today. Yes, conditions are improving, but where we stand relative to our competitor states and where we stand relative to the nation as a whole shows how far we still have to go. Fortunately, today we have 4 distinguished leaders with us who are helping to lead the charge to, dare I say it, make Virginia great again. Together with the path laid out in the Virginia... I couldn't help myself. Together with the path laid out in Virginia's blueprint, what you're going to hear from today from Stephen, from John, and Dubby, with some additional commentary from Secretary Lane, is that along with the hundreds of dedicated staffers at agencies like Department of Housing and Community Development, which have been supporting Go Virginia, other stakeholders, hundreds of business leaders across the state, is that they have not just a plan for putting Virginia's economy back on track, but they're already on the path to implementation. So the goal of this panel is to serve as a bridge from the why Virginia to the what, and then the how, which is what we will find out when Blueprint's presented later today. First up will be Stephen Murray, who is now just under 1 year under his belt at the helm of the VEDP. For any of you who know Stephen or have gotten to know him over the past year, he makes the Energizer Bunny look like a sloth. Today, he completes the strategic plan for VEDP, and Stephen will outline in his presentation the role that agency will play in moving Virginia's economic development efforts forward. Following Stephen will be John Reinhart, the head of Virginia's Port Authority. After an illustrious career at Maersk, where he single-handedly saved Tom Hanks from the hands of Somali pirates, John brought a new level of focus and professionalism to Virginia's gateway to the world. What distinguishes John is that he gets that the port is more than just cranes and wharves, but that it can be an engine for economic growth for every corner of Virginia. Our final formal presenter is Dubby Wynn. You will truly find no person who is more dedicated with every fiber of his being to this state and its future prosperity. Through his leadership of Go Virginia, along with many other senior business leaders, some of whom are with us here today, they are getting Virginia's localities to think differently, to work together across political boundaries, and to embrace change. After each of these 3 gentlemen speak, I will then open with a question for Secretary Lane, and then turn to our panelists for some additional perspective on what you, as business leaders, can be doing to help move Virginia forward. Join me in welcoming our panelists and to thank them for being with us today, and I'll now turn it over to Stephen Murray.
Well, good morning, everyone. What a special privilege it is for me to be here today in the Commonwealth of Virginia. 11 months into my job leading the Virginia Economic Development Partnership, I had a vision for this place and what was possible a year ago when I accepted this position. And everything that has happened since then has reinforced to me again and again the incredible potential of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Today we have the special privilege to talk about the future of Virginia, the future of our economy, how we can position Virginia and its various regions for faster growth. It's a very special privilege for me to be up here today with these four gentlemen. Over the last year, it's been so heartwarming how welcoming everyone has been in Virginia as I've traveled across the Commonwealth. I've visited every region of Virginia multiple times in that period of time. But again and again, there's a set of partnerships that have come back and that have really been central to the work that we've done. Barry Duvall, CEO of the Virginia Chamber of Commerce, was one of the first people that I talked to in Virginia just over a year ago about coming on board and taking this job. And the conversation we had was, what if the Virginia Chamber and VDP could get aligned on an economic development vision for the Commonwealth of Virginia? What if we could get other organizations on board? And just as it turned out, the Blueprint Virginia process was just getting underway and was the perfect vehicle for us to do that. Debbie Wynn. I've spent more time with Debbie Wynn than any other business person in the Commonwealth of Virginia. He's helped me learn about all the special distinctions of this place. The work of Go Virginia has been invaluable to the work of VDP this year. They've helped us in so many ways, and I'm so grateful for that. John Reinhardt and I serve on each other's boards. We've both been very active. We have staff in each other's offices. I see the tremendous potential of the Port of Virginia to be a huge driver of our future economic development. And then you look at the Virginia Economic Developers Association, professional economic developers across the Commonwealth of Virginia committed to the future of our economy, the future of economic development, and making sure that VDP does its work and does it very, very well. These groups have come together today, and Dr. Holsworth, I think, said it very well earlier. There's this sense of alignment in the air. What you're going to see in the next few minutes, it's not just a sense of alignment, it is alignment. Because what's so special, I think, about what's happened over the last year is not just that we've developed these partnerships, but that the people that you see before you today and the organizations that you see on this screen are aligned to position Virginia for a brighter future, and we agree on what's required to get there. Now, I want to say, is Secretary Haymore still with us? May not be in the room, but I'm going to say this anyway. I just want to say I've only had a chance to serve with the Secretary and with Governor McCullough for a short period of time, but I have to tell you, I've been blown away by their commitment to economic development, traveling the world to attract business to the Commonwealth of Virginia. These are just a few examples of many, many projects, excuse me, that they've attracted to the Commonwealth over the last 4 years. I think we ought to give them a round of applause for the great work that they've done. When I first looked at coming to Virginia, I thought about a state, a Commonwealth with incredible assets, and everything I've seen reinforces that again and again. We're top 10 for educational attainment. We're top 10 for higher education. We're top 10 for public schools. We have attractive small sites across the Commonwealth of Virginia, critical to economic development. We've got a great location. Not only are we proximate and contiguous to Washington, D.C., but we've got this great mid-Atlantic location with a natural deep water port. We have low tax burdens for existing firms in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We also have incredible, exceptional port, airport, and spaceport infrastructure in this Commonwealth. We also have a diverse array of high-quality employers. I was blown away as I visited every region of the Commonwealth at the quality of the companies there, at the quality of the products that they were developing, the quality of the workforces that they have, the quality of the services that they were producing. And finally, just as one other example, we have dozens of federal laboratories. So you look at all these things, and to Chris's point, you kind of look at the Commonwealth, you think, what could really be better? We've kind of got everything going for us. And to a large extent, that is true. But what we did, what the folks on this stage have done over the last few months, is to take an honest assessment of where we're really at, to recognize that while all of the assets that I've just articulated are real, they're powerful, they're the kinds of things that every state in America would love to have, there also are some weaknesses, and those weaknesses are holding us back. So as you look at this screen, the left-hand side is kind of a recap of the various strengths that I just went through. On the right-hand side is a layout of some of the weaknesses, the corresponding weaknesses. So when you think about education, workforce, higher education, we're among the best in the country. But we're not considered a leader in our state workforce development programs. There's something we're missing there that would close the gap. As Jennifer Almont mentioned earlier, her company is just one of many, many companies in Virginia in the technology sector that love being here in Virginia. They love the talent that they have in Virginia, but increasingly they're finding that they have to grow that technology talent outside of Virginia. Because even though we produce many, many computer science grads and others in related fields, we're not producing enough to keep up with demand. I mentioned we've got these great, attractive small sites, and that's terrific. But as Secretary Haymore mentioned earlier, we recently missed out on a huge opportunity. It was just one of many, many, many opportunities over the last few years. We have lost out on billions and billions of dollars and thousands of jobs worth of economic development projects because we did not have development-ready sites prepared quickly enough to meet the company's needs. It wasn't because of workforce or taxes or location or logistics. We literally did not have the real estate ready to go. We have to address that. Although we have low tax burdens for existing firms, we're one of a few states in the country that our tax burdens are considerably higher for any kind of new investment in the Commonwealth, either new businesses or expansions of existing businesses. While we have all this incredible transportation and logistics infrastructure, we have these traffic congestion challenges in Northern Virginia, the metro issues and road limitations across much of rural Virginia. And while we have these great companies, this incredible diverse array of companies and industries in Virginia, as Chris Lloyd said, we're too reliant on the federal government, and it's really caused us to underperform. And finally, we have these great higher education institutions and incredible federal labs, but we're really underperforming on commercialization of intellectual property. So don't make no mistake, the assets are incredible, but the weaknesses are also real, and those weaknesses are holding us back. And I want to talk a little bit about that today and the implications of that. In the wake of sequestration, I talked about the concentration of federal government-related activity in the Commonwealth of Virginia. The last 5 years on record, our growth rankings in the U.S. Have plummeted with sequestration. We were 36th in employment growth, 42nd in growth and gross state product, 46th in median income growth, not nearly where we would like to be. In fact, the slowdown in economic growth has been so substantial that for the first time in decades, we are experiencing net domestic outmigration of our population. And you know who's leaving? It's overwhelmingly college graduates. The last year that I looked at, we had more people move out of the Commonwealth of Virginia with a bachelor's degree or higher than we produced bachelor's degrees in the Commonwealth that year. It's a real issue. And then you look at growth across the Commonwealth. Everybody knows this. You've seen different versions of this slide. It's been very uneven. Now, in fact, this picture would be very similar across the whole country. If you look at every state in America, roughly half of their localities are in decline, and it's mostly about the decline of rural Virginia. When I first came on board at VDP, there was a lot of talk about, VDP's not giving rural Virginia enough attention, and that's true, and we're going to do more of that. But we also have to recognize that there are structural challenges that are holding back the growth of rural Virginia. And there are other states that have been far more competitive, far more aggressive in their economic development efforts. We need to catch up with them. Number one state for business. Anybody in this room that's been in Virginia a long time remember the days when we were regularly ranked the number one state for business in the country by Forbes, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2013, CNBC, 2007, 2009, 2011. We were regularly in the top 3 states in the country. But what's happened over the last decade is that we have fallen in every ranking of state business climates nationally, every single one. Even though we have improved recently, we're still about 6 spots down on average from where we were 10 years ago. I'm going to talk a little bit in a moment about why that happened. Look at, for example, a couple of our top competitors, though. Virginia in 2009 ranked well ahead of North Carolina and Georgia. Since then, we've fallen. They've moved back to the top. There are things that they are doing that help them to get there. And the one I think for me that's actually the most concerning is just when you look at perceptions of business executives. There are many different rankings out there, but some of them are based purely on surveys of business executives and site consultants. There's 4 of them basically. They're published nationally. You see them here going from left to right, number 1 to number 15. What you'll notice there is that the Commonwealth of Virginia no longer ranks in the top 10 in any national survey of best states for business with business executives, not a single one. And that our top competitors like North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Texas, they all rank ahead of us in every single one of these rankings. Now, part of that is there are substantive competitiveness issues, but most of it is corporate America doesn't know what's here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. A couple of the speakers earlier talked about we need to market this state for business. The most common thing that I hear about Virginia when I travel the country is that Virginia is a quiet state. There's generally sort of a positive view of the Commonwealth, but it's kind of vague and they don't really have a sense of what's here. Having visited every part of the state over the last year, I am blown away by what's here. I had no idea before I got here a year ago. We've got to get that story out. Now, why don't we drop in the business climate rankings? Over the last 6 months, we've been working with the Virginia Chamber, a very special partnership focused on our national rankings. Chris Lloyd, here with us today, as well as Dr. Jerry Gordon in Fairfax, co-chaired the Virginia Chamber's Business Climate Industry Council. And we analyzed in depth every major business climate ranking in the country. As you might imagine, they all use different methodologies to derive the results that they get to, but ultimately there were three common themes, three major factors that resulted in our decline. One was business costs. It wasn't so much that the costs got worse, it was that new rankings came out that better reflected that cost, in particular tax burdens for new investment in the Commonwealth. Secondly, I talked about the slowdown in growth and the slowdown in the expectations of future growth. That caused us to decline in some of the rankings as well. And finally, the most concerning, when I think about all the incredible assets of Virginia, we saw the perception of Virginia among CEOs decline. Certainly we are still positively viewed, but in every case we're viewed behind all of our top competitors, in some cases behind places like Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Ohio, places that I don't think we should even be compared to, as much as I love Louisiana. I also want to acknowledge the great work that Virginia Tech has done. We brought them in about halfway through the process. The Pamplin College of Business has been doing some great analysis for us on transportation infrastructure, higher education issues, innovation. This national rankings initiative with the Virginia Chamber is going to continue. This is not just a one-year thing. This is a multiple-year thing where we're going to be working together to get back to the top. And Virginia Tech has been a big part of that process. We're going to be sharing more of their work next year. So as you look at the next 10 years, there are a variety of analysts that do forecasts for growth in every state in the country, outfits like Moody's, like EMSI, and so forth. We pulled that data back in June, and this is what it looked like. It showed I'm showing the slide here is a slide of rankings. So 1 is the best at the top from 50 at the bottom. Virginia was forecast to be the 28th fastest growing state in the country, basically the top of the bottom half of the states, if you want to put it that way. But I think we'd rather be toward the top. And to get from number 28 to get into the top 10, we need to add tens of thousands of jobs per year on top of what's currently expected to be created in the Commonwealth of Virginia. That's not going to happen by accident. So today I'm going to talk about what it would take to get there. Over the last 11 months, we've been going through a strategic planning process. An essential focus of that process from the beginning has been asking the question to business people, to members of the General Assembly, to members of the administration, to economic development folks and others across the Commonwealth, what are your aspirations for the future of Virginia? What are the things that we should be focused on economically? And again, there were 5 transformational goals that were mentioned over and over. We want to get our growth to being back among the top 10 states in the country. Not just growth in jobs, but growth in the quality of jobs, growth in median earned income as well. Second, we want to ensure that every region of Virginia participates in the growth of the Commonwealth. It's not enough just to get our growth back into the top 10 if we have half of the Commonwealth that's actually in decline. This is going to have huge implications for our work. Because, by the way, we've embraced all these goals in our strategic plan. And ensuring that every region gets into positive territory is going to take some new initiatives that we haven't engaged in before. Third, as I mentioned earlier, we want to restore our business climate rankings back to the top. There's a whole series of initiatives focused on that. Fourth, we want to take VDP itself back to being among the very best in the country. In the early days of the Virginia Economic Development Partnership, its first 10 years or so, from the late 90s to early 2000s, it was regularly viewed as one of the very best in the country. That hasn't really been the perspective more recently. We want to get back to the top, not just to get the status that's associated with that, but because we're not going to be able to accomplish those other 3 big goals I've talked about without getting there. And finally, as I traveled across Virginia and met with local and regional economic developers, I heard again and again a desire for partnership, a desire for collaboration, a desire for VDP to make good on its name, the Virginia Economic Development Partnership, because economic development is a team sport. And if there's nothing else that you take away from today, I hope it's that there's an incredible partnership that's developed, not just with VDP, but across everyone focused on economic development in Virginia. So 5 big goals, 5 simple but transformational goals, and accomplishing those goals is going to require us to change some things versus what we've done in the past. Robust state growth, every region wins, best state for business, top state EDO, and super collaborator. We want to be able to check all those off over the next few years. And our plan with Barry is to come back every year and tell you how we're doing. And how do we get there? We've been working with hundreds of folks across the Commonwealth. We've also engaged a variety of experts. We've benefited from the Go Virginia regional plans that they've developed. There are really 3 big types of strategies that we need to pursue to get there, to achieve those big goals. We need to improve Virginia's economic competitiveness. We've got to cultivate Virginia's target industry growth clusters, and we need to enhance VDP's capabilities. I'm going to talk about each of these for just a moment. First of all, improving our competitiveness. One of the most interesting things that came out of this work that we did with these top consultants working with us on our plan is that as important as marketing and recruitment and incentives and all that is, the things that are really going to drive our growth more than anything else is creating an incredibly positive business climate, making Virginia as competitive as we could possibly be. The number one recommendation coming out of that is to strengthen Virginia's human capital development engine. As so many folks said earlier, we have a lot of incredible strengths already, but this is a challenge that every state faces. We've got to produce more computer science grads and related fields to keep up with the demands of our tech sector so that those companies like Transurban are not opening offices in California and Texas to be able to meet their employment needs. We need to create a customized workforce recruitment and training incentive program like the leading states have, like Georgia and others that are ranked well ahead of the Commonwealth of Virginia. As others mentioned earlier, we need to invest in development-ready sites. We can't afford to have companies choose other states simply because they had made the investments to be prepared and we haven't. There are multiple efforts underway to do that. We've got to continue to work on our state, regional, and local economic competitiveness, looking for ways to get better. One of the things you're going to be seeing in a moment is a focus on the information technology sector as our number one growth opportunity, not just in Northern Virginia, Hampton Roads, and Richmond, but really statewide. This is a growth opportunity for all of the Commonwealth. But if we're going to leverage that opportunity, we need to get broadband across the Commonwealth as well. And finally, we've got to place a special focus on achieving growth in rural regions. The default trajectory of rural America is down. There are not enough projects out there that want to go into rural regions in the country. So we can't just be competitive. We have to be considerably more competitive than the folks we compete with to be successful. Second, there's a focus on cultivating target industry growth clusters. We've looked at what are our existing strengths, how can we build on those to get better. First of all, our biggest growth opportunity, the single biggest traded sector employment growth opportunity in Virginia is IT, is information technology, software development, onshore delivery centers, data centers, and other projects. This is our biggest growth opportunity. We want to leverage it not just, again, for the big metros, but across rural Virginia as well. Second, we want to leverage this incredible asset that John Wright and his team, with the support of the General Assembly and the administration, have built at the Port of Virginia, not only to create more projects in Hampton Roads, but more projects statewide that leverage that incredible asset. Third, while manufacturing as a sector is not going to be among our biggest employment growth drivers in the future because of all the trends with automation and so forth, it will be very, very important for our smaller metros and our rural regions. We've got to be competitive for that sector. Fourth, creating business and operations centers of excellence, corporate headquarters and so forth. Again, not just an opportunity for the big metros. Certainly they would get most of the headquarters, but there's a lot of quality back office operations as well. And finally, positioning Virginia to lead in promising disruptive technologies. When you look at all the great work that's happening at Virginia Tech, at UVA, at VCU, at William & Mary, we have opportunities in unmanned systems and personalized medicine, in genomics and other biotech areas. These are big opportunities as well. And finally, if we're going to make all these things happen, VEDP's got to be at the top of its game. We benchmark ourselves against every other organization of our kind nationally to identify where we're strong and where we're weak. I'll tell you, we were weak in more places than we are strong today. We do have, I want to acknowledge, there's probably a few folks here that have used our international trade program. They're among the best in the country. There's a few other areas that are very strong, but in most cases, we've got a lot of room for growth. We've laid out in this plan exactly what it would take for us to become best in the country. We've got to implement a robust marketing program. I know that there's some folks that feel like we shouldn't market Virginia, but I'm telling you, when you have a state with all the assets that we have that's not ranked in the top 10 of any survey of business executives, that is a problem. A marketing budget of 0 is not the right marketing budget. We can debate the right number, but I think we'd all agree 0 is not the right number. Third, we want to expand our business development and trade development programs. Our international trade team is doing a great job. There are more things that they could do with better resources. And finally, we've got to earn the public's trust. We need to be a national leader in incentives administration to make sure that some of those stories that came out of the last couple of years will never happen again, and that when companies get incentives from the Commonwealth, they either perform or they pay us back. In a nutshell, those are all the big things we need to do. 40 initiatives across 3 major types of strategies. So there's a few things that are near-term priorities. By the way, if you haven't noticed, you see that Blueprint Virginia 2025 stamp is on every single one of these initiatives. We've worked with the business community from day one to say what are things that can move the Commonwealth forward, what are things that the business community can get behind. Every single item in this plan is in Blueprint Virginia, and we're so grateful for that. Our top priorities for this next year, there are many, many things that we need to do over the next few years, but the top ones right now, this is the low-hanging fruit items. Launch a custom workforce recruitment and training incentive program. We can get in the top 3 in the country in 3 years if we do this. I've done it before in Louisiana. Second, we need to launch a modern marketing and branding program and lead generation program for business. We do a great job in tourism. Let's do a great job for marketing business as well. We've got to expand site development efforts in the Commonwealth. We need to expand our international trade programs. We need to invest more resources to develop growth strategies in each of our target industry sectors and do that in an innovative way. And finally, we need to do a better job of taking care of our existing businesses in the Commonwealth of Virginia and making business retention and expansion priority number one. Everything in this presentation we can do. We have more assets, in my view, than any state in America. We just need to leverage them. I want you to think for a moment where we could be in 5 years if we implement everything that is in Blueprint Virginia. Imagine Forbes having a headline again saying that Virginia is America's best state for business again. Wall Street Journal talking about Virginia as America's IT leader on the East Coast. The New York Times talking about rural Virginia bucking national trends. And The Economist talking about why college grads are moving from places like North Carolina and Texas to the Commonwealth of Virginia. We have all the assets. We have the business community. We have the leadership. Now is the time for us to seize this exciting moment of opportunity to position the Commonwealth of Virginia for a very, very bright economic future. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. Barry, Chamber, thank you for putting on this event and all the work you've done to bring the Blueprint 2025 to reality. We look forward to the unveiling in a little while. 4 years ago, we stood in this room and we didn't have a vision for Virginia's port. In 4 years, we have reinvented this port, re-energized the brand, brought more economic opportunity to Virginia, and I want to talk about that because as Stephen just closed his presentation, this is all within the grasp of those of you in this room and of our political leaders. If we have the will and the focus, we will get back on the top. So I'll try to run through a few slides, and it's a real honor, Debbie, to be up here. I mean, we've had more meetings, I think, too, than my family members. And Aubrey, you know, we talk all the time. So this is a collaborative effort. And I think that's one of the things that's so amazing is through all of these initiatives that have been going on across the state over the last year, there's common themes, common threads, and common points. And all of them have solutions. And the solutions are within our grasp. So here we are. We're in Virginia. We got 6 facilities. We're going to drive the evolution of each of those facilities, and that helps the economy around the Commonwealth. This is the momentum. This is the brand that we've delivered in the Port of Virginia. 1.6 million containers, $1 billion started to be invested around Virginia to create, expand new companies or expand existing companies. We have accelerated over 4 years from 9,000 TEU ships to over 14,000, and we'll touch on that. We have $670 million of construction underway right now to increase our capacity, and we are the #1 rail provider for freight movement on the East Coast. We are a global gateway. We help bring Virginia's brand around the world when we go to the customers. You can see we have 45 countries that we're serving every week. We have regular weekly schedules to Asia and calls from Europe and to and from Europe. It's a pretty balanced trade, too. We can see we're 53% on your import and export. So we're taking Virginia goods overseas as well as bringing the products we need here to Virginia. This is how we move things. It's pretty straightforward, 36% on rail, 60% motor carrier. That means the 250-mile radius is served. And we're doing things with water. We're up 3% of our volume is by water, barge services. It's up 12.8%. The overall rail's up 11%. Trucks up 4%. Annual growth 7.2%. We are on fire growing this port as we build the new capacity. This is why it's working. We do become a real gateway to other states that should rank well below us as far as the best place to do business, but we will serve them. We will be their intermodal connector. This is something that just happened last Christmas. We finally got double-stack service with CSX. That we've had it with Norfolk Southern, so now we have both Class I railroads serving us, our ports to and from, with double stack. We continue to work with VEDP and all the economic development directors to drive business, to attract business, and we are a catalyst for this. This is a check presentation to Rubbermaid on all of the expansion that they've done and the workforce that they've created. So you can see we're trying to raise the message as being a catalyst for development. Port-related activity around Virginia, you can see the dots on the map. They aren't just in Hampton Roads, they aren't just in Richmond, they are across the Commonwealth, up near Front Royal, out in Southwest Virginia. 37 announcements in our last fiscal year, about just under 3 million square feet of space brought online, over 4,000 jobs were created, and $862 million in direct investments. We need to double these numbers to really take advantage of Virginia's opportunity and the workforce. We keep creating clusters. You know, that's part of the attraction with the advanced manufacturing and some of the target industries that we're mapping out, because they will be attractions and clusters that will come around. This is just what's happened in coffee since we put a major focus on coffee in Hampton Roads. We are getting roasters there, we're getting distributors there, we're getting warehouses there, and we grew 28% year over year in our coffee markets. We're trying to make sure that we get momentum. We had not had any spec buildings in Virginia since 2009. 2009, it just went dormant. This last year, we have had 4 spec buildings started. This is a drawing of one that's going on Richmond with Panattoni Development. It's 500,000 square feet with expansion to 1 million, and the dirt is moving now. They put 280,000 square foot in the Hampton Roads area. It's leased out and occupied. We have up in Northern Virginia. We have some going with Equus Industries near Front Royal. So a lot of activity, but we're still way off of the mark on site readiness, site preparedness, and available space for the industries that want to move. We're going to keep you competitive. We're going to drive the port. This is just showing you how fast the big ships are coming. 2014, nothing bigger than 8,500 TEUs. Now, in 2016, when the Panama Canal opened, we jumped over 10,000, 13.1, 13.3, 14.4. These are the kind of ships that are driving cost-effective transit around the world, and we are a hub port. We were not a hub port, or even considered a hub port 5 years ago. So we're back in the game. We're sending our message about Virginia is a global gateway. This is just a picture of the expansion of the canal, and the 14.4 is as big as you can take through the Panama Canal. And we're already having weekly services with that size vessel. This is another one that just came through. Remember, 90% of the freight is carried by 3 alliances. Those 3 alliances are all going to be using 14 to 22,000 TEU ships on their main east-west hubs and networks. So if we aren't ready to serve them and capable of serving them, they will go somewhere else. So we are making sure that we remain an attraction for the carriers for decades to come. This study was mentioned before. Port of Virginia went from 9th in the rankings to 5th. And if you can't read, it's pretty small, but it's LA, Long Beach, New York, New Jersey, Seattle, Tacoma, Virginia. 5 best gateways in the United States. And that's by the infrastructure within the port and then the real estate markets. We were drugged down a little bit because we didn't have available sites and real estate development ready to go. But great progress. Compounded annual growth rate continuing at 5%. You look at the new normal, we're doing more than 225,000 TEUs every month. This is a $42 million investment to speed the freight movement in and out of NIT. We opened this in June, and I think, Aubrey, we're doing the ribbon cutting on the connection with 564 before the end of the year. So we're making it easier to get to and from. I think that was used before, easy to do business. If we can make it easier, people will want to do business with us in Virginia. This is an expansion. The Civil Works just started. This was supported by the Chamber, by all of the business community to get some investment back into the port. The seed capital, $350 million, was brought forward so we could do this project. It is under construction now. The cranes are ordered. What it will do is modernize this facility, increase its capacity by 46%. It'll all be done before 2020, and it will be something to see. I'd like to show you, this is how it will look when we're done. This is just a quick simulation. You're flying in from a current Strat operation. This is how this port will operate. It's using technology. It's using new systems. Totally automated gates, nobody in the lanes. They swipe a card, they're instructed on where to go, and we're already going after the equipment that they want to pick up. Trucks will be queued, and they will then be instructed. And there's 30 stacks that have rail-mounted gantry cranes, and they will be told to go in. After the driver disengages the twist locks, he'll go on a pressure-weighted pad, stand there, and we will deliver the freight. Or we will take the freight off and move it to the water side. There are no people in those lanes. Those are all done with computer systems. The only human intervention on all of this activity is at the very end, when the crane stops for safety, we make sure there's a remote operator that will lower that container or go get the container off the chassis. Safer, faster, all electric, reducing our carbon emissions, smoother, and taking terminal operating system software to the next level. We know it works because we're using it at one of our other facilities now, and we're just going to modernize and upgrade it slightly. So that was the land side transactions. You do the exact opposite on the shore side. We reduced the travel time. So all you have to do is end the stack right into the crane area for the ship-to-shore crane movement and on. We'll use short shuttle trucks, 1/1. They're safer. They can move faster. Those will be manned, and they will be operated with operators. Our ship-to-shore cranes have direct operators. So we'll continue to have a large employment base running the terminals, but we will be able to do 400,000 additional moves at that facility. And I'm going to skip through. The next piece is just, it would show you how the rail operates as well. We have, central rail yards. We serve the railroads right there, and it's the same process. OCRs, optical character recognition booths. Just drive through them. We pick up all the information. It goes into the computer. We know how to move the freight. We're doing this very fast, very efficiently, and becoming competitive on a global scale. Virginia International Gateway is already under construction. This is the other terminal. It has that rail-mounted gantry approach on it today. $320 million is going into the ground. The first RMGs, the rail-mounted gantry cranes, will be delivered here on February 2. We'll have the first 3 stacks in operation by April. We're adding 800 feet of berth and 4 more ship-to-shore cranes that are 172 feet from boom to ground line. So they're the largest cranes on the East Coast. So we'll be able to handle the largest ships coming. This is going to finish in 2019, April, and we will add more than 50% to our capacity, 4 new berths, 4 new ship-to-shore cranes. Ladies and gentlemen, that's 1 million containers of capacity. That's going to all be online. It's a 40% increase across the port. This is what companies are looking at because they know we're here. They know we'll be able to move their product, and they know the port is here for the long haul. It's really exciting to see the level of interest that is continuing to come to Virginia. We just have to make sure we're ready to handle it. Wider, Deeper, Safer is underway now. We're going to take our channels down to 55 feet. We're going to go 1,400 foot wide. It'll be 56 feet out in Thimble Shoals, 59 feet out at the Atlantic Ocean. That would make the Port of Virginia the deepest, safest port on the East Coast of the United States. We're 2.5 years through the study. We're working with the legislature and the administration to do some advanced funding so we can get this all done. This project wouldn't finish until 2024 under its current schedule. Each of these additional sizes, jobs, jobs, jobs. That's what it's about, so that Virginia can have more employment and better opportunity. We will be the best on the East Coast. This is a drawing showing you the channel and the different elements. It's a $325 million project that is not part of that funding I've already spoken about, but we will get this done. This is something that's too important for the future.
But today, those post-Panamax ships, when they come to the East Coast of the United States, they have very few choices. And clearly, their best choice is the Port of Virginia, and that, I would say, not only because of the 50-foot depth, and let's be honest, we have the largest naval base in the world there, all the aircraft carriers, the destroyers, the nuclear subs. There's a lot of great activity. We need that deep port. But what I'm very proud of is the efficiencies that are now on the port with T-Mike and, as I say, with our cranes to be able to move those containers very quickly, and then to be able to offload and then to get it out to the commerce of America. Nobody can do that. We have CSX, we have Norfolk Southern. I've expanded 64. I put new interchanges at 564 so that we can get our goods immediately moved out. So the good news is the port's set. We are on a trajectory now to be the biggest in the globe. I won't take second to anybody. We are going to demolish those other worthless ports. Everything in the future of this country has got to go through the Port of Virginia.
The reason I had to end I had to share that with you because 4 years ago, with the chamber, you went to Governor McAuliffe and you said, what do we need? What do we have to do? And he's focused on transportation. He's focused on good governance. He's focused on diversifying our economy. And a lot of the things we're talking about here today have been achieved in 4 years because of that political will, that singular focus, and the effort and talent of Virginians trying to make it a reality. So I wanted to thank Governor McAuliffe, but this is also our chance to do the sounding call because he's one of the best salespeople for Virginia we ever had. That duty now falls on all of us. We have to continue to carry the message to the market so that we can achieve the things that he started. The foundational work is there. Go Virginia was created in the last 4 years. The reset going on at BDP was done in the last 14 months or last year. The reinvention of the port was done. Changing the way transportation is funded was done. A lot of great work has been done, foundational work. Now it's up to us to take it to the next level. And to take you to the next level, I'm going to introduce Debbie Wynn.
So I've got this thing which I'm pretty much going to ignore because the dynamic in this meeting can't be ignored. I'm going to change and I'm quickly going to go through some slides that will give you some data that will tell you that notwithstanding all the good, we're not performing. And then I'm going to take a little bit more on an update on Go Virginia, but I want to expand my comments about what to do next so that we can leave here with a clarion call of what we've got to do. So, what is Go Virginia? You've seen the slide. You can read it. You're familiar. Again, I'm going to abbreviate this because I want to spend some time on the value-added piece of all this. Next. So what are the problems? This is important because it relates to the data. When we started looking at this, we obviously know what you know. We have decades-long history of independent cities and counties with hard boundaries. The level of cooperation is as low as any state in the country. It's nobody's fault. It's the system. And it's been here for a very long time. People are doing what has been expected of them. The Dillon Rule has made it so localities are overly dependent on property taxes. They have no stake in employment. We've created a stake for it. But as a consequence of that, they compete. They compete. And we have to do something about it. It's a structural problem. Secondly, the region is the organizing unit of the economy. Now, I'll have to tell you, when we started saying this to a lot of people a while ago, there was pushback. No, we have a state economy. That's not true. We have a local economy. You go look at the great states that are moving ahead, and they'll tell you it's a region. Businesses are agnostic and do not care about political boundaries. Zero. They care about a workforce, supply chains, quality of life, infrastructure that they need to succeed, and a political boundary is not even on their list. That's silly, and obviously it needs to be addressed. Now, economic trends, which go back 10 or 15 years, which combined with the federal cuts, have put a lot of downward pressure. You've heard that. Next slide. So this is a slide. This comes out of VEDP, and Stephen a few minutes ago referred to it. And what you see is that despite a bit of an uptick in 2006, we got a little bit better. On a relative basis, we nevertheless declined on an absolute basis. So what you see currently are the numbers that Stephen referred to. 36th in employment growth, 42nd in gross state product, and 46th in income growth. Folks, that's a disaster. That is unsustainable, and if any company is taking a look at this state and they see that and they're thinking about investing, look, ask the real estate people where they're putting their money these days. That stuff does not capture growth opportunity and investment returns. It's got to be dealt with. The next slide comes from the ODU State of the Commonwealth report, which reiterates the same thing but projects out. We're red. Average U.S. is blue. We are half of average projected for the next 2 years. Half of average. Okay, the next slide. This gets into our regions. And as you can see, except for Charlottesville, which is doing a little better than average, and Richmond, which is just about average, but has underperformed average for some of this time, almost all of our regions are underperforming average. Average has never been the standard for this state. If it isn't top quartile, we're not interested. Average is underperforming, flat out underperforming. Okay. So this shows what you've heard and just gives you a little more graphic information. This again comes from the ODU, State of the Commonwealth. Federal funding. So you can see the DOD is falling faster than anything. And folks, we have some more risk. The continuing resolution is up this month. You all read the papers like I do. Has anybody got a prediction on what's going to happen here? Democrats didn't meet with Trump to talk about an extension on the budget. Nobody has any idea. And if you could understand the disruptive nature of that on how the military and the shipyards are operating these businesses, it's unbelievable. No business of that magnitude can operate well when they have that lack of predictability. It's amazing they're doing as well as they are under that circumstance. Okay, next slide. Now this is one that people tend not to focus much on. This deals with the creation of new businesses. Because we were dominated by federal spending and large operations, we did not have a pattern of creating as many new businesses as many other states. That's a serious problem. Small business creation is going to account for 2/3 of job growth over the next decade. We are underperforming. Again, you can see the math. Average underperforming. So if we don't start creating some companies and crank it, we got a problem. Now I'm going to quickly go through the next piece, which is Go Virginia. This is my heart and soul, but I want to get into the whole economic development piece, so I'm going to move through this quickly. So this is our purpose statement, which we've had for a long time. Create more higher paying jobs. I'm asked, why higher paying jobs? You saw the 127. You could do 12720 if you wanted, because the truth of the matter is high paying jobs create lower paying jobs. The opposite is not true. A lot of our economic development dollars, workforce development dollars, $350 million a year spent in the state of Virginia is not focused on higher paying jobs. And we'll get to that in a minute. We have to have a reset on what we're doing. And by the way, they're great people that have a lot of skill sets in this space that we simply need to take the shackles off and talk about what are the best solutions and move forward. I'm also asked, why primarily out-of-state revenue? If you're only dealing with who gets market share and a finite amount of money that is spent on whatever your retail sector is, food, clothing, housing, economists will tell you there's a finite amount of money that's spent based on your population and your overall economy. What will grow that economy beyond inflation is new dollars coming into your state to create new jobs. It is the only way you will get real growth. Otherwise, you're serving your retail sector. I gave this talk, Barry, I think it was maybe an event you had, or William and Mary, a couple of years ago, and I asked, it was largely economic development folks, and I said, how many people think that the creation of higher paying jobs, primarily from out-of-state revenue, should be our #1 priority? And it wasn't this large a group, it was a couple hundred people. 3 or 4 hands went up. So we have a disconnect in terms of what we need to do and what our priorities ought to be in order to really achieve. Next slide shows you the 9 regions that we've set up to administer grants. The next slide shows you the existing funding, how it's being used, the $28 million that the General Assembly has authorized, some money into each region to get going. Per capita grants applications are out there. We're starting to get them. We have a meeting coming up in 10 days where we will consider some of those things. And over the next 2 months, every region will be applying for applications. This is moving very fast. And remember, this is a startup. And so we're all over the state trying to make it equal for everybody. And if you heard the mantra earlier, rural is important to us as urban is. These 9 regions are here, and we want every part of this state to be proud and have opportunity. And that's a fundamental principle of all of us. Now, a lot of us who have been in Virginia forever feel that in our heart, in our DNA. Others may say, well, there's no ROI. You know what? We're going to do it anyway because we think it's the right thing to do. Okay. Then you get into the kinds of projects that we see. And here you are. I don't know if you can read this slide very well or not. We put this together a couple of years ago. It's still true. So what you're going to find here is that in the top left, scale up of existing and small-sized businesses. We have no initiative in this state to take existing companies that don't have the skill sets or the balance sheets to scale up, and by the way, that should be in clusters. Now, it's not VEDP's responsibility to do scale up of small companies, but their clusters are going to have a lot of influence on the areas that we're concentrating on. Bottom left, joint site development, economic development process. Imagine a few years out that instead of every locality fighting like mad to have a site, that we have in any region 4 or 5 localities that buy and contribute to 4 or 5 properties in different jurisdictions. They share the cost and they share the benefits. Anybody know anything about diversification in investment policy? It's compelling. And yes, it's a stretch. The General Assembly's already authorized this. What we've got to do is see that it happens. The bottom, startup collaborations, incubators, innovation centers associated with these clusters. If you're interested in the port and you've got some activity and we actually start doing serious research and have innovation centers that are putting us out in the forefront of technology change, where are you going to go? Now, this takes an investment that we're going to have to do, but we're going to do it. I mean, this is right in front of us. Stephen's all over this. John's all over it. On the right-hand side, commercialization of R&D. We have a thing called VRIC, the Virginia Research Investment Committee, I guess it is. 4 of us on the Go Virginia board, or 4 of the 9 board members on that group, and we're pushing them, and you'll hear more about this in a minute. They're going to come up with some really good thoughts for us to follow and help in that area. And then at the top of the list is credentialing and talent development. I'll come back to that in just a minute. Next steps, Go Virginia. You can read this as well as I can. We fully expect by July the $28 million we have will be blown through. In Hampton Roads, we've already gone through in our first wave of submissions all the money we have for the year. We've been working on it longer than most, but and we're pleased about it. The budget request, here it is, $75 million for the next biennial. What we did very innovatively here is disproportionately put money in the rurals. A lot of them, it was per capita based on population. We moved it all up to a minimum $1 million per capita in every rural, and then layered on what they had from the prior bill. Now, we got to get this through the General Assembly. I'm optimistic. We've been having a lot of conversations. What do you think, Aubrey? I'm going to get to this in a minute. I'll make the comment now. There's no free lunch. If we want to have a future, we have to invest in it, and the amount of investment will determine the quality of the future we have. Anybody in business knows that, and we better stop putting our money in the rearview mirror. A lot of money can be redeployed, by the way. A lot of money can be shifted to higher priorities and so forth, but these things you're hearing about have got to be funded. Now, we'll talk some more about that, and I know they're competing interests, and they're all worthy. But at the end of the day, if you want to have opportunity and you want to have revenues adequate to invest in the future, you better spend money now on growing this economy. So, the last point. I think we're making a difference. I feel pretty good about it. Everywhere I go, people are talking about collaboration. I mean, in my hometown, I live in Virginia Beach. Norfolk and Portsmouth, 2 inner cities that really have never cooperated or anything, just announced the Elizabeth River Compact to start coordinating activities so that they don't conflict with each other. That would have never happened if Go Virginia hadn't been around and we hadn't started this conversation. There's something that has been below the surface that cap has been taken off, and people are delighted to start talking with each other. I'm not telling you it's 100% everywhere, but there is a clear momentum here that is really wonderful. The other items you can read. We feel pretty good about it. Now let me move to the punchline. So here are the economic development opportunities. It's my opinion we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to do a reset of these things you heard about today and others to catapult us back to the top, which is our rightful place. To the top. And if it doesn't happen, it's going to be because we don't support it and do it. The days of civic activity and dabbling in economic development are over. A once-a-month meeting to talk about economic development is worthless. If they're not full-time staff devoted with very clear metrics and alignment of activities, we're not going to get there. So when people are volunteering and they say, well, you know, I'm busy, they're busy, fine. Get somebody not busy to work on this that's passionate about the subject you're talking about. And by the way, the Next Gens, we've identified 35 or 40 of them in Hampton Roads. We're going to have a lunch with them in January. We're going to put our whole blueprint out there and say, which pieces do you want? These young people will be on fire for something. You got to match passions and interests, and they're busy. They're all running companies and have families, but they want to make a difference. And frankly, they don't want to go to another dog and pony show at a civic board. They want to actually spend their time where they think they're making a difference and having an impact. And right now, I would argue, this is the top priority in the state. A rising tide will float all boats. The people that get hurt the most in a down economy are those at the bottom of the food chain, the lowest in terms of who makes money, those not educated well. They get hurt the most. I happen to be a bleeding heart for that group. I think we've got to put a floor under them. In most cases, it's not their fault. All of it starts with great economic development. So, you see what's on here. What you may not know about is broadband. Broadband, because of Danville, starting Mid-Atlantic Broadband and getting Microsoft out on 58, has dropped a pipeline into Virginia Beach. The existing pipelines internationally came into New York, New Jersey, and Florida. Now they have figured out they want another one. It's coming into Virginia Beach. One pipe's there. It's shared with Telefonica and Facebook. The other one's being built now to go to South America. Before we finish, there'll be 6 or 7, maybe 8 pipes there. Those 2 pipes I just talked about increase the East Coast capacity for the internet by 50%. Just those 2 pipes. There's no strategy around broadband for commercialization, for business. It just fell out of the sky because Danville did such a good job and Microsoft liked it and they said we should go in here and do this. We need to take that. And when we talk about Virginia's global gateway at the port, we also have this broadband. And by the way, if you add Ashburn, Loudoun County, 60% of the worldwide traffic in the internet goes through those data centers. There's no reason for this state not to be the broadband capital of this country. Now that's going to take some vision and some work, but that's a major thing. You see sites on here. One of the things that is important, and it takes a long time and people don't understand it, if you haven't been in startups and startup investments, it's a hard area to understand because it doesn't happen quickly. And if you don't start it, it never happens, okay? But you have to be prepared for this. So there's certain predicate things. If you don't have an accelerator and a seed fund and a system to get those things going, you're not going to get any serious effort on that. If you don't have an angel network, if you don't have good due diligence on all those things to move them up the path, if you don't have innovation centers in the way we were talking a minute ago, won't happen. In Go Virginia, we want every region to have an appropriate startup entrepreneurial ecosystem. Whatever is appropriate for them. They're not the same. They'll be different based on their needs and strengths. They all need to be there because it's not just those jobs and companies. Companies coming in, their existing concern, and say, my God, you've got that going on down here? You people are serious about innovation, aren't you? And the comment about critical mass in terms of employment, you do these things and all of a sudden there are other opportunities for people. They start to see, well, you're working on information technology, workforce. So if this doesn't work, I can do something else. That makes a big difference. And then finally, I'm going to end with workforce. Now, fabulous conversations here today around workforce. They're just conversations. So the next steps are going to be absolutely critical. We have spent in Go Virginia some time behind the scenes talking to some very knowledgeable people that are mostly in government and with businesses to talk about their needs, and we need a new model. Every state is seeking the same thing. So as business people, what do we want? We want a differentiation that is sustainable and gives us a competitive advantage going forward. That's a high bar because everybody's got the same issue. We think we can do it. Now, if we're going to do it, it means each one of you that has a business and a balance sheet, some have small companies, it's very hard to do, are going to have to invest in it. If this workforce is really that important, then you're going to need to take some interns. We think we can help fund that. We can incentivize it. Apprenticeships. Because you can do all this in isolation in a community college, it usually doesn't work because there's not a fit. And so there needs to be some time with that company to be sure the culture and the exact needs, and they're involved with the curriculum. They're not going to teach the curriculum, but they want to know that you're covering the right stuff. And my view, we need a Kennedy-esque moonshot objective to attack information technology employment, and we should put big, big dollars and effort behind that. There is no other state in this country doing it. And information technology is where the shortages are at the critical path for expansion. So I would say, and just finishing, I mean, who knew, right, that we had all this opportunity? I mean, in any of our companies, if you saw this kind of opportunity, you'd feel glorious. I mean, it's just unbelievable. We've been underachieving. There are a lot of reasons for it. Part of it is, frankly, we haven't felt this downturn because on an absolute basis, we've made a little bit of progress. It's the relative decline that's killing us. And when we go into this recession, if we don't reverse that, I don't know when it's coming, but it's coming, we're going to have a problem. So I think the stars are in alignment. Two great people here have talked about what they could do. You heard some great CEOs talking about their needs. We're all saying the same thing. Workforce, sites, innovation, entrepreneurship. That is the new economic development model. The old one was whale hunting. Thank you, and we need your help.
We'll start. We're very fortunate to have Secretary Lane with us here today. I think everyone in this room is excited that we have a steady hand on the ship of state here as we go through this transition.
Not everybody.
Yeah, that's right. But what I wanted to ask him to provide some commentary on is, you know, we've heard from three distinguished folks about the future of Virginia's economy. You know, I think we've heard it all, and we hear it, but how do we make sure, aside from the marketing program that Stephen's talking about, that we make sure that Wall Street and that others hear that message? And what can we do as business leaders in this room to make sure that they understand, that Wall Street and others understand that we've got a plan, we see our problems, and we're doing something about it? Mr. Secretary?
Well, thanks, Rich. Thanks for letting me be here today. Before I answer that question, I do want to talk about two of the assets and one of the weaknesses that Stephen had on his chart. I've had the opportunity to work with John, the big asset, the Port of Virginia, and how that turnaround has come about. And that was key to being able to justify infrastructure investments and other transportation, not only in Hampton Roads, but across the state. But also, you also mentioned the spaceport, and that is going to be key, I believe. It has a sustainable plan, much like the port now, but for technology, particularly in unmanned vehicles, because we have invested not only in that automation on our roadways, but also the sea. The port's helping the spaceport actually put that in place over there at Wallops Island, and we have one of the only unmanned runways in the country. So in terms of that technology piece, what I was looking for in all this, I think that's going to be key. Now, in terms of the weakness, I did happen to see up there about infrastructure in Northern Virginia, in that because of our focus on regions, and just like you've talked about economic development, that has been the key to the revitalization of transportation infrastructure in the Commonwealth, is a regional focus. It started with the 2313, the new taxes regionally collected, but also Smart Scale. We took that further in saying you only get monies for regional projects that you work to collaborate on. And with that approach, there's now over $10 billion in projects in the 64, 95, 66 quarter. And a lot of that, billions of that, is with private investment in that. So I think one of those weaknesses is going to, as we see, we kicked off this morning the first phase of 64. Many of you might have drove coming from the beach. We kicked off 95, a couple miles with Transurban here a few weeks ago. That extension, we just announced, 66, 22 miles. Transurban's also looking at 10 miles south, plus all the stuff going on here with the Hampton Roads Bridge Cross. So a lot of that's in place, and I think that's going to help, because without that, goods and services are not going to move around freely within this area. Now, let me answer your question, because that really gets to the heart of why I think Governor-elect Northam asked me to consider this situation, and one of the reasons why I accepted. Because what he asked me to look at is more from a chief financial officer perspective, not just does everything add up and we make sure our budget is all balanced, but are we using our investments wisely, as any one of you in a corporation would look at. Now, what I've heard today is obviously very encouraging, but if you look at it from Wall Street's perspective or the rating agency's perspective, that's got to equate into additional revenues for the Commonwealth. I mean, that's really what they focus on. How does all this movement and coordination, how does that help offset the decline we've seen in defense spending? And of course, the biggest mover of our budget in terms of revenues is withholding, and that gets to your workforce development, Debbie. Not just jobs, but higher paying jobs in terms of how that's going to move our budget. One of the things that I would encourage us all to do, I know I did it when I was doing transportation bonds in front of Wall Street, I know John does it, is always talk about how they tie in to the other segments, how it ties into economic development. And I believe that resulted in getting us, we're the only state in the country, AA plus transportation revenue bonds, one step below AAA, and it's because we kept tying it into how the economic activity in the Commonwealth was going to be increased. So the other thing I'd point out is measuring, all this stuff we're doing. Now that we've put it in place, is it doing what we thought it would do? And so having good metrics to talk to Wall Street and others, or investors, is this really happening? But of course, that's only one side of the equation. And really, the last meeting I had with the rating agencies, they were focused on the expense side because of what you talked about, sequestration. And because if you look at the analysis of why we had a negative outlook, it was because Virginia was using one-time or reserve monies to fund ongoing operations or ongoing incentive or other programs. So that's going to have to be addressed. And I know the General Assembly's looked at that and have to reserve, but that's going to make some hard choices because you're right, we've got to invest money, but we've got to make sure that we are addressing those concerns because we do not want to lose a AAA credit rating. I think that is one thing that cannot happen for all our benefits. But so from our perspective, it gets back to something that you mentioned again, Stephen. The incentives that we use have got to be used wisely. Are we making sure that we're taking these limited resources? And I can tell you what I found in transportation, all these different resources coming in, revenues that weren't directed. So we spent a lot of time on getting a handle on where they were going and made those hard decisions. Were they going to go to things that actually move the needle? So I think those type of decisions are going to have to be made in this budget. I don't want to get, obviously, Governor McAuliffe will put into his budget, and by the way, one of the weaknesses you'll see covered in there is how we're going to deal with WMATA and the fiscal transit cliff, which is a big transportation issue going forward. But I think from the perspective of Governor-elect Northam, obviously building on this and making sure that we are using all the stuff that you guys are doing that is relating and turning into things that are going to stabilize the Virginia economy, AAA credit rating. Obviously very concerned and encouraged, but we need to make sure they actually do something, is what you all said. It's political will. I got a kick out of, Stephen, you said you and John are each other's boards. And you know what's good about it? You both go to your meetings. Because the people that were there before you, they were on the boards, they didn't go to the meetings. And it really comes down to actually taking hold of it and somebody being, just like you said, Debbie, somebody being the champion to make sure these things happen. and that's what it's going to require. So hope to be a little bit a part of that in the new role and look forward to working with all you as we go forward.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.